You're watching ClearCut, coming to you live from New York City. I'm Michelle Makori. The Israeli election results are officially in, and the final vote tally is the following. The Likud party has seen some more gains. The final tally gives the party of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu one more seat than previously projected, and it is now at 36 seats. Blue and White is still in second place with 35 seats. So that means that the overall majority for an expected coalition of center-right and religious parties stands at 65 to 55 in the 120-seat Knesset. Now, the final count also shows that the new Right Party of Education Minister Naftali Bennett and Justice Minister Ayelet Shaked fell just short of the necessary votes and will not be in the parliament. And now they are calling for a recount. But the next step comes this coming Wednesday, when the official results will be handed to Israel's President Reuven Rivlin. Rivlin is then expected to ask Netanyahu to form the next government. All right, let's talk more about the big Israeli political picture now that those final vote counts are in. And joining us is Matt Brodsky from the Security Studies Group. Matt, nice to have you back with us.
Good to be with you.
All right, Matt, with all the votes finally counted, checked and rechecked, as we mentioned, Netanyahu's Likud party has 36 seats in the Knesset, one more seat ahead of Blue and White. How do you see Prime Minister Netanyahu now moving forward with putting together his coalition?
I think he does so with more confidence than he did earlier in the day, when he had to think to himself that he was tied. But he originally had roughly 5 seats to play with, which is to say, even if he came in a bit short of the number of seats that Blue and White had, he would still have the easier path to cobble together a coalition. So I think he still sticks to more or less what he was intending, which is to put together a coalition on the right, a lot of the usual suspects, one might say, but this will be essentially a little bit more solid because the numbers have increased for the coalition going forward. I know he still would like to make it as big a tent as possible, right, and that is something that would pay off if there's a peace plan put on the table, because as we know from past peace attempts, that certain parties tend to bolt from coalitions on the eve of such announcements. So we'll see what happens.
So you do see him consolidating all of those parties that would be inclined to form a coalition with him, giving him that 65 to 55 seat majority?
I mean, that's certainly possible. The part that the devil that's in the details here is exactly what are they going to be asking for from him, and he's going to have some asks as well. So,
well, that's an important part, because Matt, this is where people sort of now try to negotiate for various cabinet positions. In terms of the defense minister position, we know that was something Naftali Bennett was gunning for. He's obviously very disappointed that his new right just missed the threshold. Victor Lieberman also wanting this defense position. Who do you think gets it? Bennett's out of the question now. Do you think it's likely that Netanyahu will just keep it for himself?
He certainly could. That's obviously the big prize position, that anyone would want to take. Avigdor Lieberman, obviously, this is an interesting story in the fact that he, left that post essentially out of protest. And walked away. Didn't really, the performance of the party wasn't like he saw a giant payoff at the polls. But of course, if it circles back and he gets the defense portfolio, well, then that's a huge victory. In other words, no harm, no foul. But there are still other aspects of the negotiations. Clearly, these next weeks, while the coalition is being put together, are actually the most important part of the Israeli electoral process, which really is just in the wheeling and dealing. Of course, that in the United States, is something that we don't typically associate with, where you would have a defense minister who's actually not your person from your own party that would carry out your wishes. So this is something that we'll see. Part of it may be that parties want to see him commit to annexing parts of the West Bank. Then it would be a matter of timing. There's also a matter of passing some form of law that would be like a French law that would protect Netanyahu from indictment while he's currently serving. It depends on what way he wants to make a deal and what those religious parties or other parties are going to be asking for. But Defense Minister, Netanyahu has already in the past recently shown that he's quite capable and willing to have as many posts as is necessary, and he can carry it out himself.
He likes to be both Prime Minister and Defense Minister. Obviously a big win for Likud, but Matt, we have to give Gantz and Lapid credit for forming a party that was just beat out by Likud by 1 seat. I mean, they have now vowed to be a formidable opposition in the Knesset. How do you see them making good on that threat?
Well, it depends if you're listening to Yair Lapid, if you're listening to Benny Gantz. I mean, certainly they want to be that other option, and we'll see how that works. It's a different type of cast, obviously, than when it was the left in 2015 that was the biggest challenge in Zionist Union. So I think it's obviously part of the bigger story where the center basically any party that's to the right of center is now what is the competition for Likud, which is already on the right, and the left has been decimated to about 6 seats for a Labour Party. The blue and white party can certainly stand in the way and obstruct, but they managed to make it through an entire election cycle without really committing to much specifically other than to say, we're not Netanyahu, so vote for us. Which is an interesting platform. Now, where they're going to decide to draw the line, I guess we'll see. But these are national security big matters. The peace process is not one of those things you play politics with the way in the United States you play politics with certain issues. So we'll see how they decide to play their cards. They could go from being popular to not.
We'll see how this shakes out, and also important to point out how those religious parties have a pretty strong position with 15 seats collectively, so we'll see how they will exercise their leverage in a future coalition. Matt, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Matt Brodsky. Well, earlier today, the U.S. refused entry to the founder of the anti-Israel movement.